Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. At this point, I think many of my viewers are trying to figure out why you cannot see my face, and I simply just have the blinds closed on, or the lens closed on the cam. Why am I doing this? I just figure like mixing things up a little bit. I figure, might as well, since I'm not really into the whole sweeping special effects for videos like Venom Fang X and other individuals here on YouTube, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Um, since I'm not really into that sort of thing, I figured, hey, might as well just mix it up by closing the lens. What do you know? So anyway, just trying that, and just so in case anybody thinks that someone took a sledgehammer to my face and I'm for some reason, not willing to show my face, or someone maybe burn my face with acid. No, I'm totally okay. Everything's fine. Just have the lens closed. But thank you for your concern nonetheless. Anyway, okay, so as you can see from the title of the video, where's Waldo? I mean, where's that verse? This is continuing the analysis of the Gospel of Matthew. Now, I figure, why do I have to go in order? I was thinking that. I was looking at all my notes for the Gospel of Matthew, and I realized, do I really have to go in order? No, I really don't have to. I can basically just pick and choose which ones I want to do, which ones I feel like doing at the time, and talk about certain topics wherever they might be. I figured that'd be a little bit more entertaining that way for those of you who have actually stuck with the series. I know it's been a while since I made a video in this series. That way you guys will never know what I'm doing. You won't know whether you'll see my face, or whether you will see my face, or which chapter, which verse I'm actually talking about. That way we can really, really mix things up. And hopefully it won't be a bad idea. By the way, please leave comments if you think this is a stupid or dorky idea. I greatly appreciate it. Anyway, let's get down to some serious work here. The chapter and verse, for those who are interested, is the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 27. Chapter 27. Yes, chapter 27, verse 7. And this is a very interesting verse. This is probably one of the few verses in the entire Gospel of Matthew that just is very amazing. Now, this is one of two verses that are in Matthew where Matthew claims that he is quoting messianic prophecy. Now, to catch people up here, the thing is that in Matthew's Gospel, he quotes a lot of what he calls messianic prophecies, or what are known as messianic prophecies. In other words, he quotes certain verses that he says prophesies the coming of the Messiah, or actually just prophesies certain events that happen in his gospel. Now, what's interesting is that up to this point, you can actually find what he quotes in the Old Testament. They might be out of context, which they all are, and as I've talked about in several other videos that I've made, they usually, when you put them back in their proper context, have nothing to do with what Matthew tries to portray by taking them out of context for his narrative. But at least, we gotta give the guy credit. At least he's quoting scripture which is actually in the Hebrew scriptures. The other verse is the one about that he'll be called the Nazarene. That verse is actually nowhere in the Hebrew scriptures. Nowhere do the prophets ever say the Messiah is going to be called the Nazarene. This verse does not exist in the Hebrew scriptures. Now, Christians, of course, have a lot of theories for that, but I'll post that video in the description because I don't want to get off course now. But this is the second verse. This is the second verse, or verses, that are in the Gospel of Matthew, which are not found anywhere in the Hebrew scriptures, even though Matthew says that they are. Again, Matthew 27, verse 7, and we'll read. And after taking counsel, they bought with it the potter's field as a burial place for strangers. Therefore that field has been called the field of blood to this day. At that time what was spoken through Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled, saying, And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him that has been priced, whom they of the sons of Israel had priced, and they gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me. Okay, end quote. So that is the entire thing. So this takes place, just to give some background, this takes place right after Judas returns the money to the temple, the blood money. He throws it back in the temple, he doesn't want it, he goes off and he hangs himself, according to Matthew. Now the priests, because this is blood money, this is tainted money, they can't actually put it into the temple treasury, so they actually use it to buy a field to bury people in. And as it says, it is called the field of blood, and it is called the field of blood to this day, meaning I guess, the day in which Matthew was writing the Gospel. Now, what's interesting are a couple things to note. First off, on a historical level, to my knowledge, and please, anyone correct me if I'm wrong, Josephus, Eusebius, any of the Christian or Jewish historians, the Talmud, secular historians of the time, do not record anything called a field of blood. There's nothing called a field of blood in which people were buried in the area of Jerusalem. But yet Matthew says this thing exists during his time, yet there's no historical record for it. Furthermore, Matthew says that this is something that's in Jeremiah. And yet when you go to Jeremiah, the words that were spoken through the prophet Jeremiah regarding the 30 pieces of silver that's priced for the one is nowhere in the book of Jeremiah. Now, other manuscripts, variants of Matthew, say Zechariah, some say Isaiah. So at this point now, it's starting to realize that either the scribe who was making the copies was mistaken, or they seriously thought that this verse was contained in all or some of these prophetic books. Some manuscripts actually only say the prophet. They actually don't name a prophet. What's interesting is that, like I said, even if you go through Isaiah, Jeremiah, or Zechariah, this prophecy, this passage, is nowhere in any of these books. So Matthew is saying that he's quoting a prophetic book. He says you'll find it in here. And up to this point, Matthew has been very consistent. When he quotes something, you can actually find it in the corresponding prophetic books. This, however, is nowhere in the Hebrew Scriptures. Nada. Nothing. Zip. Now, some Christians try and make the excuse that he was just blending together verses from Zechariah or Jeremiah or whatever to come up with this verse. Now, I will actually post in the description section for you to read the passages from Zechariah and Jeremiah from which they say Matthew is getting this from. But please pay attention to the context, and please pay attention to what the verses are actually saying. And I think you'll come to find that even if you believe that, the interesting thing is that even the context has nothing to do with someone betraying the Messiah, giving 30 pieces of silver back to the temple treasury, and then it's bought for a field. Nowhere does it talk about this. It's actually very different. The situation is very, very different. And if Christians are going to use the excuse, well, you know, it mentions 30 pieces of silver, because some Christians have this habit. When they see one verse mentioning something, they instantly think that when it corresponds to something in the New Testament, that it therefore they must be linked somehow. Well, if that's true, then why is it that in Exodus chapter 21, verse 32, it also talks about 30 shekels, or 30 pieces of silver, when you're dealing with animals for sacrifice? So if we're going to use that game, then that means that verse in Exodus must have to do with Judas throwing the pieces of silver back into the temple and buying a field, right? Right? No, I don't think any Christian's actually going to agree with that. But anyway, I just found this very odd, because like I said, Matthew, regarding which manuscript you read, whether it's Jeremiah, Isaiah, or Zechariah, these verses are nowhere in any of those books. None. So really, it becomes a question: is where are the verses? Where does Matthew really get these verses from? It's an amazing situation we have here. Anyway, so I appreciate anyone's comment. Again, I will post the relative verses from Zechariah and Jeremiah in the description section for all of you to read. And please look at this with an open mind. Really try and find it, because really this has become a case of not just where's Waldo, but where are the missing verses. Thank you everyone for paying attention. Again, no offense to any Christians or Christianity. I know I came off kind of sarcastic in this video. I'm just trying to mix things up. But if I came off as rude or offensive, I apologize. I really am just trying to seek the truth of the matter. So thank you everyone for watching. Peace be with you all.